大家好，我是 Olive Branch Down. So in our previous video on cooking with olive oil, we got a lot of great questions and comments. Specifically, we were asked a lot about other commonly used unsaturated fatty acid cooking oils like corn oil, peanut oil, rapeseed oil, tea seed oil, canola oil, and grapeseed oil. You can refer back to our earlier video on saturated fats where we discussed in detail about pork fat and coconut oil, because in this video we'll specifically focus on unsaturated fatty acids. I'm going to explain to you quickly just what unsaturated fatty acids are from a chemical understanding point of view so that you can understand why some of them are bad for you and some of them are good for you. So first, understand that all fats and oils are fatty acid chains. These are carbon atoms that are linked together by electron, covalent bonds, and they have a hydrogen ion on both sides. Okay, so when they are categorized by saturation, all fats, you have to understand, are a combination of saturated fatty acids as well as unsaturated fatty acids. And unsaturated fatty acids also can be further categorized by monounsaturated fatty acids as well as polyunsaturated fatty acids. So when we say that this oil is a monounsaturated fatty acid, for example, then what we actually mean is that the majority of its lipid profile is monounsaturated, but they also still have some saturated and some polyunsaturated fats in there as well. An unsaturated fatty acid basically means that there is a pair of hydrogen atoms that are missing compared to saturated fatty acids where they are all completely filled with hydrogen ions, is that hole causes the chain to bend, a kink in that chain. And this is called a covalent bond, a double covalent bond, and it is generally quite weak. So when we say a monounsaturated fatty acid, that basically means that there is one bend in the chain versus poly, which means many, there are many bends in this chain. So what makes unsaturated fats good or bad for you? Well, you have to understand that these bends or kinks are covalent bonds and they're weak, as I mentioned. So when they encounter heat or light, that's actually enough radiation for them to break off. When they do break off, the electrons that have been holding them together break off like shards of a breaking glass that have shattered, and they can actually cause damage in neighboring cells. And if they're not absorbed or cleaned up by antioxidants, then they can eventually lead to cancer. This is why unsaturated fatty acids, which is predominantly omega-6s, are quite bad for you if you either cook with them or if they have been mishandled. So when choosing an unsaturated fatty acid, you should look for ones that are cold pressed, which means that they have not been heated to a high temperature and are not under high pressure, as well as bottled in dark tinted glass bottles or metal cans to protect them from light. Now that you have a good handle on the chemistry of fats, let's go into some commonly used ones for cooking. Most monounsaturated fatty acids are quite healthy for you because they contain high amounts of oleic acid, and this is very common in extra virgin olive oil as well as avocado oil. Another benefit of monounsaturated fatty acids is because they only have one bend, it makes them actually quite steady and stable when you apply heat to it. This is why they're actually pretty good for cooking as well. Polyunsaturated fatty acids also have some health benefits, specifically omega-3s, which you might have heard of. And this is because it's quite good for your heart, as well as we're trying to gain a balance to our omega-6s. We ideally want a 1-to-1 ratio, but currently our highly processed food diet causes an imbalance of 15-to-1. So that's why the omega-3s are really good to help us catch back up. An example of an oil that's really high in omega-3s is flaxseed oil. But this is exactly the reason why you don't want to cook with flaxseed oil, because of the omega-3s. It's a polyunsaturated fat. They will break and become free radicals. Just use it for a dressing or as a spread. Now, a lot of you guys have also asked me about rapeseed oil, and this is quite an interesting oil. It's a traditional oil, meaning they've been using this for a long time here in China as well as India because it's grown here. And the thing is that they're actually quite high in this erucic acid level, which is really bad for the heart, as a lot of studies have shown. However, they've also found out that by combining it with saturated fats, that a lot of the problems can go away. They are very high in omega-3s and 6s, so as long as they're cold pressed, then you can preserve that nature. Traditionally, when you would get rapeseed oil, is that you would go to a peddler, someone on the street with a corner, and they would actually have a setup for you to grind the rapeseed and actually extract the oil for you, which is cold pressed and actually quite fresh, which isn't so bad for you. But nowadays, when you buy it in the supermarket in bottles, they're most likely extracted using a lot of gas and high heat and pressure, and this is actually not good for you. So the next two oils I want to talk about are peanut oil and tea seed oil, and they're a little bit better because they're a monounsaturated fatty acid, so they do contain higher levels of oleic acid. However, they still also contain a lot of omega-6s, and which is why I still don't readily recommend them. But by far the worst offenders are corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower seed oil, and grapeseed oil. Because of their really high omega-6 nature, they are very, very unstable, as well as their processing, manufacturing process, have been subjected to high heat, high pressure, and a lot of oxidation already before they've already been bottled in clear plastic bottles, sitting in supermarket shelves for months. And then when you take them home to cook, you're even adding more heat to it, which is just a lot worse. So I do understand that in Chinese cuisine, you do use a lot of corn oil as well as peanut oil because of its neutral flavor, and it's relatively cheap. But you really are sacrificing your health for that. And so if you can switch to different oils for cooking, like pork fat or olive oil, even duck fat, these are all actually much more stable and healthier for you when you're cooking. So in conclusion, guys, you do want to focus on saturated fats as well as monounsaturated fatty acids like olive oil for cooking, and not so much polyunsaturated fats because of their high omega-6 content and that they will tend to break off and become free radicals. I hope you found that useful, and as always, please leave any questions or comments below, and I'll see you next time.